Now I want to talk about some Harley news that dropped recently that I reckon is genuinely big news for anyone who rides a Harley or anyone who's been thinking about getting into one. You see, Harley-Davidson officially confirmed that the Sportster is coming back, the air-cooled 883 version. It's back from the dead. And before anyone says it, no, they didn't sell it to China. That was a rumor that did the rounds, and apparently it's complete bullshit. Anyway, the new Sportster, it'll be built in York, Pennsylvania, just like it always was. But here's the thing that matters most for anyone sitting in Australia thinking about getting into a Harley. Because right now, the cheapest Softail on the floor at your local dealer is the Street Bob. It's around $25,000 right away. Now the new Sportster, it's being targeted at around 10,000 US, which if Australian pricing follows the usual pattern, it's going to put it somewhere between $14,000 and $16,000 here down under. Now that's potentially a $10,000 gap, and that changes everything about who can get into the brand. Let me break down why I think this is actually a big deal. So a bit of context for anyone who missed it, the air-cooled Sportster, it was discontinued after the 2022 model year. And Harley, well, they replaced it with a liquid-cooled Sportster S, which came in at around 15,000 US dollars. It was heavier, it's more complex, and it didn't appeal to most of the Harley riders. The community, well, they just didn't fall in love with it. And the dealers noticed. And according to Harley's own CEO, Artie Starrs, bringing back the Sportster was the single most requested thing from dealers across every market globally. So on May the 5th, as part of their first quarter earnings call, Harley has announced their new strategic plan, and they're calling it Back to the Bricks. And the return of the air-cooled Sportster is front and center of that plan. Now, apparently it's targeting a US price of around $10,000 and it's scheduled for a 2027 model year release. But I want to be clear about this. This isn't just a product announcement. This is a deliberate reversal of their direction. So the previous strategy under the last CEO prioritized touring and electric bikes, and it was very wholesale focused, and it used broad discounting to shift inventory. Now what Artie Starrs is saying now is they got that wrong. And the new direction is a rider-centric portfolio, proper dealer profitability, and targeted offers based on what riders actually want. Now that's a meaningful shift, and it explains why the Sportster is coming back and it feels different to just any other new model launch. Now here's some of the context that I think is important. Because between 2019 and 2025, Harley's retail volumes fell around 40%. Their margins were compressed 18%, and dealer profitability dropped around 80%. Now they are some pretty significant numbers, and Harley didn't announce the Sportster out of generosity. They've announced it because they had to. What they were doing wasn't working, and the data has made that very clear. But here's the thing, I actually don't think that changes the story for us riders. The outcome is going to be the same. We get more accessible lineup, we get more models to choose from, and we get a brand that's refocused on what it does best. And the reason Harley's doing it is for the business, of course. The result though is good for all of us. Now let's go deeper on the price, because this is actually where it gets really interesting. Because right now, the cheapest Softail you can walk into a Harley dealer and buy in Australia is the Street Bob. It's a great bike, but it starts at around $25,000 right away. And in US dollars, that's around $17,200. Now the new Sportster, it's been targeted around 10,000 US, and we don't have official Australian pricing yet. Harley, they haven't confirmed that, but if the same pricing premium applies as it does on every other model in the range, we're probably looking at somewhere between 14 and 16,000 Australian dollars. Now that's potentially a $10,000 gap between an entry point and a Street Bob. Think about what that means for someone who's sitting on the fence about buying a Harley, someone who genuinely wants a Harley, and they can't quite stretch to that 25 grand. Now suddenly there's a real option. It's an 883cc air-cooled V-twin. It sounds like a Harley. It feels like a Harley, because it is a Harley. And that's the point. You're not buying a watered down version of the Harley brand. You're buying the real thing at a price that actually makes sense for the first bike or a second bike, or just someone who wants something smaller in the garage alongside your main ride. I want to say something about that engine specifically because I think it really matters. The 883 V-twin is the engine that introduced generations of riders to Harley-Davidson. It's not the biggest, it's not going to win any drag races, but it does have that classic Harley character. It has the sound, the feel, the way it pulls through the rev range. It's genuinely a Harley engine. It's the real deal. So Harley themselves are calling it the ultimate blank canvas for self-expression. Now the Sportster has one of the strongest aftermarket communities of any bike they've ever made. Because people don't just buy these things, they build them, they seat swap them, they put bars, exhausts, tank, paint, etc. But if you want a bike you can generally make your own, the Sportster platform is hard to beat. And when you factor in that Harley apparently are launching a full range of parts and accessories alongside the bike at launch, not 6 months down the track, they're doing it at launch. That shows that they've got a real commitment to the customization culture. Now, for someone who's new to the brand, that's exactly what you'd want your first experience to be. But here's the part of the announcement that really got my attention because it goes just beyond the Sportster. Harley showed this slide during the earnings call that basically mapped out all the gaps in the current lineup. So in the Softail range alone, they've identified a space below the Street Bob, a gap between the Street Bob and the Lowrider S, and another gap at the top of the Softail range before you get into the touring money. And they've flagged all those gaps as spaces they intend to fill with a target of, wait for it, 20 new models and trim lines over the next 3 years. Now, if you've been riding Harleys for a while, you remember when the range was genuinely broad. You had the Sportsters at the entry level, then you had the Diners, then the Softails, then Touring, and within each family there were multiple models at different price points. There was a bike for almost every rider and almost every budget. Now, over the last few years, we've seen that range get stripped right back, and what we've ended up with was a thin lineup with some pretty significant jumps between the models. What Artie Stars is saying now is we're going back to fill those gaps. And the smart part is they're doing it by leveraging the existing platform, the existing engines, rather than spending a fortune engineering everything from scratch, which makes a lot of sense. So we're going to get more models, more accessible price points without blowing the Harley development budget. And I'm really excited about that, not just as a Harley owner, but as someone who wants to see this brand thrive. Because a broader range means more riders finding a bike that suits them, more people coming into the brand, and more of those people eventually moving up into the different ranges of the lineup. Now there's a second bike that got announced earlier but also mentioned again alongside the Sportster. It's the Sprint. Now this is Harley going after the lightweight entry-level market, targeting under 10,000 US and possibly as low as $6,000. So reports are suggesting it's going to be based on the Hero X440, a bike that Harley already sells. But I think if the bike looks like a Harley, if it carries some of that design language and the visual identity of the brand, then the engine configuration is a lot less of an issue than I think it needs to be. Because Harley themselves, they're positioning it as an entrance to the brand. It's a bike that's going to bring someone in the door and it can start their Harley journey at a lower price point. So I'll reserve my judgment until we actually see it properly, but if the price and the look are both there, then I think this is genuinely going to be interesting. So here's where I land on all this. We all know Harley's had a tough run. Volume's down 40% over 6 years. Dealers are under pressure. They have had a product strategy that felt like it was chasing the wrong customer while losing touch with the ones they already had. And the Sportster S, it's a great looking bike, but no one's really asked for that. Now the entry level of the range disappeared and the gaps between the models got wide enough that a lot of potential buyers just went elsewhere. So what this announcement tells me is that the new leadership has genuinely listened. They've gone back to what Harley actually is. V-twin engines, classic character, accessible price point, and a lineup that's broad enough to have something for every rider, no matter where you are in your riding life right now. So the Sportster's coming back at around 10,000 US dollars, and I think that's the right call. It's the bike that probably shouldn't have been discontinued in the first place. I know a lot of people have been saying that. It gives dealers a proper entry-level option. It brings new riders into the brand, and it sits just below the Street Bob rather than competing with it. And if Harley follows through on the rest of what they've outlined, 20 new models and trims are going to be filling those Softail gaps, rebuilding a proper lineup, then I think the next few years, they're going to look a lot better for Harley than what they have in the last 6. And I'll be honest with you, reading through the full Back to the Bricks presentation, I'm actually really excited about where Harley-Davidson is heading, and I don't say that lightly. So I want to hear from you. Are you excited to see that the Sportster's back, or do you think Harley still has more work to do to earn back your trust? So drop it in the comments. I'm really curious about what you all think and where you all land on this one. Now, if you found this useful, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you in the next video.